This article is called Every Third One of Us by Hanna Wegrzynek. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce these Polish names. Walking along Warsaw streets, I wonder how the city looked like before Second World War. True, I was born many years after it ended, but as a historian I have a need to know the past, and as a Warsawian, I try to imagine the bygone city that was called the Paris of the North. They say it was beautiful, more beautiful than today, and different. Do many Warsaw citizens ask themselves the same question? Probably most are concerned with the here and now. The roots here, like mine, do not go deep. In most cases, their parents or grandparents did not move to Warsaw until after 1945, filling the gap left by those who had departed forever. The family tradition of many modern residents of Warsaw lie elsewhere, and this does not encourage reflections on the look and the character of the city in the past. In the old photographs, we do not see chaotically scattered blocks of gray housing projects. The houses are set tightly side by side, forming the streets, whole thoroughfares pulsing with life, filled with little shops, eateries, and workshops, the likes of which are few today. Most of the surviving photos are of the grandest streets. The life of the side streets is less often documented, and how interesting it must have been. It has all passed. The people are different as well. They dress and act differently then. Women wore hats. It was a fashion, but also a kind of norm imposed by the customs prevailing in certain social groups. Looking at the pictures, we understand that styles change, but among the crowds of Warsawians from the days of the Second Republic, we find yet another difference, not one the result of fashion, but of religion and customs. Men in long black topcoats and narrow-brimmed hats, women in wigs and dresses completely concealing their elbows and knees. Today we do not meet people dressed like that anymore. The speech of the pre-war streets was also different. It had different sounds, a little harder and grittier, full of this long oo sound. This was Yiddish, the language of the Ashkenazi Jews, Polish Jews, a blend of German, Hebrew, and Polish. The smells of the pre-war streets were other smells permeated with goose fat, ginger, and garlic. In today's Warsaw, there is no way to hear those sounds or sense those smells. It is hard to believe that there were such places in the world, in Israel or in Brooklyn, New York. There, when the people reminisce about the old Warsaw, the important street names they mention are not Jerozolimsky or Ujazdowski, but Nelwiki, Krokmalna, Gezia, and Zelzana. These streets were the setting of that other world described and popularized by Isaac Bashevis Singer in Shosha and the family Muscat. Jewish Warsaw lived beside us Poles for 200 years, supposedly the same towns, but how remote and unknown. Before 1939, about 370,000 of the residents, almost a third of Warsaw, were Jews. Can we really appreciate that in every third home, Christmas Eve was not celebrated, the Christmas tree was not decorated, and St. Nicholas did not arrive? Completely different holidays were observed, with names that sound foreign to us: Purim, Sukkot, Chanukah. Walking down the street, let's imagine that every third person was a member of another culture and religion. Every third person would be someone we could say nothing about today. The world described by Singer or preserved in a few photographs is one we can no longer find. It perished between October 1940 and May 1943. Tens of thousands of Warsaw citizens crammed into the ghetto died of disease, hunger, and repression, and nearly 300,000 were murdered with systematic and calculated cruelty in the gas chambers of Treblinka. 1/3 of the residents of the city, the capital of a European state, ceased to exist, along with their language, customs, and culture. The way that happened is not a matter of no concern. We cannot fail to know how the life and death of every third one of us, Warsawian, looked. The tragic fate of the Warsaw Jews can be contained in an emphatic phrase, the Holocaust, a premeditated atrocity carried out by Nazi Germany. We cannot forget, however, that it was done in our midst. The absence of that memory is our Polish shame. The world of the Warsaw Jews does not exist in the consciousness of the Warsavians who live on Komalana, Zelazna, and Grybowska streets today. It has turned out to be appallingly easy not to know about 1/3 of the residents of the city who lived there, worked there, and together with the Poles created a common history and culture only 60 years ago. When I attended university, and only then found out that before 1939, as many as 370,000 Jews lived in Warsaw, at first I could not believe it, and later it dawned on me that I had been deceived. In the many books I had read, nothing on the subject was written. I think that this was what had to be changed. I would not want some young residents of Warsaw to someday experience the same feeling that I had when I was already a student in the history department. I would not want them to feel deceived by the history professionals. That was written by a woman called Hanna Wegrzynek. I think she has a good point that it's very important that people learn what actually happened in Poland because that's part of their history. It's very sad that they feel a need today to rewrite it somehow from what it says in the media these days. It's very hard for them to accept the responsibility that they had murdered so many people just because they had a different religion and culture. And it's very important to remember that it happened in order to prevent racism in the future, in order to be true to the history.